Hello again, juniors. Welcome back to part B. So I've gone back to the objective slide because now we're going to cover objectives 6 through 8. And objectives 6 through 8, let me present that. Okay. Number 6, explain how the fourth commandment extends to all legitimate forms of authority. Describe what it means to be in the world and not of the world. And of course, you can't see objective number 8. Apply the fourth commandment to the role of citizenship. Let me go back to presenting that. All right, I'm going to move over to slide number 30. The fourth commandment and the common good. Oh my gosh, I'm making a mess here. I thought I mastered the screencasting thing by now. Hold on. There we go. Okay, all public groups and organizations are called by God to respect natural law. So that means that any group that we are a part of has to be in line with ultimately our God's plan. So that means it has to be a good and objectively good organization. Leaders are called to safeguard the fundamental rights of the human person and to respect and promote human freedom. They have to be committed to the common good and must work towards this through morally acceptable means. So let's take a moment to make sure we understand what the common good is. Common good means it's for the benefit of all. It means that ultimately it will provide good to the world and not harm any particular group of people. So, respect for legitimate requests of leaders or political groups is required by the fourth commandment. Respect for legitimate authority leads to peace. Think about traffic laws. If there were no streetlights and there were no things that we could get tickets for, there would be a whole lot more damage to people, car accidents, things. So we need law, and respecting law is important as long as it's a good law. And I think we can agree that traffic laws are an example of that. When any public group is not in line with God's plan, it cannot fulfill its role in God's plan of salvation. All right. Now we're going to shift a little bit. So we have to address this concept of a Christian being in the world, but not of the world. So where are we? We are in the world. There's no two ways about it. We live here. We have to live in this world, but we should not be of the world. And what that means is we should not be a product of what we see around us if what we see around us is not in line with God's plan. So there are a lot of negative aspects of our society. We have loose morality. We have basically a society that promotes addiction to our desires, and that's not good. We have to be Christians in that environment. So that means a lot of things. So let's look at this. There are times when the government and public groups act in direct opposition to moral law. For example, unjust wars, slavery, denying freedom of religion, unjust laws. Remember that just because something is legal does not mean that it's morally good. There's greed, favoritism, prejudice, and misinformation. When faced with such corruption, Christians are called to be in the world, not of the world. And how do we do that? We do that by giving witness to our faith in everything that we say and do. This can only happen when Christians interact with people who do not always share Christian beliefs. That's what it means to be in the world. If we all just communicated at church and we only worked with each other, then there's no way that the love of Christ could make it out into the world. So we have to interact with people of all different sets of beliefs. And that's what it means to be in the world, but not of the world. So we have to challenge the values that we see that are contrary to God's values. And we have a great explanation of that here. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, "Do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and pleasing and perfect." Being in the world and not of the world can be challenging. So some of these challenges are being uncomfortable when we have to make choices that make us stand out. Something really simple. If you're used to saying grace before a meal, but you go out with a group of friends and they aren't saying grace, you have a choice to make. Should you say it privately? Should you skip it because it's weird and you don't want to stand out? That's what it means to make some of these uncomfortable choices. We have to make extra effort to speak to leaders respectfully about things that we disagree with. We have to choose to not be a part of groups because of practices that might contradict our values. So while we do have to be in the world with people who might not agree with us, that does not mean that we should participate in activities that can be harmful to other people. Making these choices is difficult, but it does lead to integrity and peace of mind. You will be able to sleep better at night if you stand up for what you believe in. So that leads us to faithful citizenship. In order to build a society based on truth, justice, solidarity, and freedom, Christians have to obey the laws. We have to vote, we have to pay taxes, and we have to give our opinion on public policies and issues. Catholics must first be faithful to God in their role as citizens. It's very important. Our allegiance to God is far more important than our allegiance to any government. So our political ideas have to be informed by our faith. We should not have this dual existence of here's what I believe politically and here's what I believe in for my personal experience and my faith. It's not supposed to work that way. Those two ideals should be in line with each other. Unless a law is truly unjust, we are obligated to follow it. In most democratic countries like the United States, our laws protect the common good and therefore they deserve our respect and obedience. But what happens if a law is truly unjust? What if obeying a law actually goes against promoting the common good? If we have a properly formed conscience, we are obligated not to follow those laws if a law is unjust. So how do we do that? We practice civil disobedience. That means that we disobey the immoral demands of an authority or we refuse to follow that law. And we should be doing this in a public way, not a disrespectful way, but certainly in a way that points out the fact that the law is unjust. We have to be involved in the political process and work towards the creation of just laws and the abolition of unjust laws by encouraging and voting for public candidates who respect natural law and the common good, by educating ourselves on political issues, and by influencing lawmakers to vote for laws that promote the common good. So unless a law is truly unjust, we have to follow it. So that's a repeat, so I'm going to move on. That concludes our extension of how the fourth commandment applies to our citizenship and as a member of a society. So as you can see, authority is pretty big. We're just one person, and there are a lot of people and institutions in place that are here for the common good. And as long as they are here for the common good, then we are obliged to respect them. So I'll be curious to see whether or not you agree or disagree with anything that you heard on Part B of the presentation. So until next time, thank you very much for your participation, and I will see you next week.